Penguin Random House Audio presents Midnight on the Potomac, the last year of the Civil War, the Lincoln Assassination, and the Rebirth of America. This is the author, Scott Ellsworth. In loving memory of Major Elmer W. Ellsworth, United States Army Air Corps, 1942 to 1946, and Helen Solberg Ellsworth, United States Army Arctic, Desert, and Tropic Information Center, 1942 to 1945, who faithfully served their country in a different hour of need. A note from the author. This is a book about how we almost lost our country. For 12 precarious months in 1864 and 1865, the fate of the United States of America lay in the balance. Some of this story you may already know. Other parts will likely be new to you. They certainly were to me. For the Civil War was not just a conflict between armies and generals, but a fight for the very soul of the nation. It was fought by men and women, the famous and the infamous, the free and the unfree, on battlefields and in cities, in trenches and in hospitals, and in a red brick theater located less than 6 blocks from the White House. Our story begins in Washington in the spring of 1864. The war is 3 years old. The curtain rises. Act 1. Chapter 1. Something Big. Hardly anyone could understand the boy. Clad in his child-sized Union Army uniform, complete with shiny brass buttons, epaulettes, and a silk sash, he cut a striking first impression. But his words, such as they were, came out as a flood of toneless syllables, inverted consonants, and dropped vowels. Dear became day, crook was took, and Mrs. was mumbled as myth. He had his own language, recalled one of the bodyguards. Only there was more. 3 weeks past his 10th birthday, Tad Lincoln still could not read, write, or dress himself, and he had such a hard time chewing that his food had to be mashed or chopped ahead of time. He was still grieving the loss of his older brother, Willie, to typhoid 2 years earlier, while his mother, beset with worries that she might lose him as well, had pulled him out of school. As a result, Tad wasn't just the president's youngest son. He was also a deeply lonesome boy growing up in the most famous house in America. Sensitive and highly emotional, Tad loved the men of the Pennsylvania Bucktails, the infantry regiment assigned to guard the Executive Mansion and the War Department, whom he sometimes drilled on the back lawn or marched through the White House. But he was also more than a little mischievous. Once, he harnessed a pair of goats to an upturned wooden chair and, like a miniature Roman charioteer, drove them into the middle of a formal reception being held in the East Room. During cabinet meetings, Tad would burst into the room unannounced, give his father a furious hug, and then dash out again while the exasperated Secretary of War, Edwin M. Stanton, the veins in his neck straining at his collar, sputtered on about what an outrage such behavior was. No vase, window, or piece of furniture was safe when Tad was on a tear. He could also be sweet and kind. Tad often borrowed a few coins from James Holliday, the White House carpenter, to give to a poor man or woman out on Pennsylvania Avenue. Late one afternoon, he invited a gang of street children to share his dinner. The cook, it was said, tried to shoo them away, but Tad appealed to his father, who said they could stay. He also possessed an uncanny way with animals. There was never a stray dog or cat that he couldn't befriend, while his own personal White House menagerie included a dog named Jip, 2 cats, a rabbit, a horse, and a turkey named Jack. He also had the 2 goats, both of which often slept in the same bed with him. Mr. Lincoln, recalled Major William Henry Crook, a presidential bodyguard, kept Tad with him almost constantly. The president would hoist Tad upon his shoulders and gallop through the corridors like a horse, or play blind man's buff and other games. When his father was too busy to roughhouse, Tad would get as near to him as he could and play quietly by himself. "I believe he was the best companion Mr. Lincoln ever had," Crook added, "one who always understood him and whom he always understood." Despite his youth, Tad Lincoln was a keen judge of grown-ups. He could see right through those who paid him compliments or gave him gifts only to gain the good graces of his father. He absolutely despised Secretary Stanton and once doused him with water in the White House garden. And he could tell right off who among his endless stream of tutors were all about boring lessons and even more boring books, and those who were game to fly a kite up by the unfinished Washington Monument on a blustery April morning. For all of his baby tongue, Major Crook recalled, he had a man's heart and in some things a man's mind. While Tad Lincoln couldn't speak properly or make himself easily understood, he could hear just fine. And what he heard as the fine spring weather enveloped the city in early 1864 were the sounds of impending change. For days there had been hints that something big was in the works. Stevedores at the 6th Street Wharf had been unusually busy for weeks, while railroad flat cars loaded with troops had been regularly observed heading south out of Alexandria. In Washington itself, officers and enlisted men had been lining up outside of the city's more than 30 photography studios to have daguerreotypes, ambrotypes, and tintypes taken to be mailed back home. There was even talk among the city's more than 5,000 prostitutes about pulling up stakes and heading to City Point, the massive naval port and Union supply depot along the James River in Virginia, where the final spring offensive, which everyone knew was soon to commence, would surely be launched. Then, on April 25th, from a balcony above the east entrance to Willard's Hotel, located a block and a half from the White House, President Lincoln reviewed no less than 25,000 Union troops, streaming like a great blue river down 14th Street. The rank and file were like their comrades on the Rapidan, worn, sunburned, high-spirited boys, as writer Margaret Leach later captured that moment. Their equipment was light: thin bundles, knapsacks, tin cups, frying pans, guns that shone like silver. Under their grime and sweat, these soldiers looked as hard and handy as mechanics' tools, which have been used and will be used again. These soldiers were also a far cry from the unsteady, green troops that the Union had first pitched into battle when the war had begun. "Our army had learned to believe that it was sure of ultimate victory," wrote one War Department official. "Rely upon it, the end is near as well." It certainly had been a long time coming. The last 3 long and bloody years had seen a near constant succession of campaigns and battles, complex maneuvers, and unfulfilled promises. Once obscure towns and place names like Bull Run, Chickamauga, Chancellorsville, Antietam, and Gettysburg were now known by all, and with them had come a
Sample complete. Ready to continue?